part of the public record. Let us rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everyone here, good evening again. Welcome everyone. It's getting into that time of year where we start seeing each other a lot more often, and this is the first of many of those budget meetings. So I just want to welcome everybody again, and I know all of you have received a packet with the agenda in there. I know that Todd, you had some observation on that. I'll comment on that later. But is there any changes, additions, or deletions we want to see on today's agenda?
Yes, I have, as I said in my email. I think the first selectmen's report is very valuable to us. It's valuable in timing of it as a Board of Finance meetings. And there's a lot of projects going on in town. I think we need they all involve money, lots of money. And I think we need to have our fingertips on that and know what's going on. So I would like to, today's agenda says only one item A, updates to weather events. I know that's probably relating to the storm damage. But we also have the transfer station improvements going on. We have the tree cutting plan, it's a big deal, and the village revitalization plans as well. So all that involves money and like to keep it going. So I would suggest the Board of Finance ask for a simple one-page report for each one of these. And the items in the report are expenses to date in each one of these projects, the expected revenues or revenues collected already, liabilities, by that I mean what other financial load are we going to incur with these projects? Because I realize it's variable, a lot of things are going on, but we need to keep ahead of it. And last but not least, the anticipated project costs. And the reason I ask for that is not only for my education, but for the Board of Finance in general, because I get around town a little bit and people ask me these questions, and I feel kind of dumb when I don't know the answers. So I think it'd be a big help to the first selectman as well to keep us apprised and keep everybody informed, and will help lead to successful conclusion of these projects. So that's what I'd like to see on the first selectman's report at our monthly Board of Finance meeting.
All right, so as far as the agenda is concerned, and not to that point, what I'd like to point out is all of that information becomes available during the budgeting process, every bit of detail. Yet, a one-page summary of some of the direction that we're going would be helpful. And I didn't indicate that on our selectmen's report, but Emmett, I'm going to invite you to elaborate on perhaps a little bit longer in covering some of the topics that Todd's discussing. Topics in general. I want treetop stuff. We don't need to get into the fine details, but the fine details will come, but we want to know a general direction of some of those topics. Is that acceptable to you?
Exactly right.
All right, so under tonight's calendar, we're just going to say first selectmen's report. I just put that on the weather events, but we'd like a little treetop on the other pieces as well. Did you have a comment?
I think it would be perhaps better were that to be expressed in a motion that requests of the first selectman to include a brief, as you say, but a brief summary of those 1, 2, 3, 4 topics in our future, on the agenda and in our and to be shared at our future Board of Finance meetings.
That's likely the proper way of doing it, so would you please?
I would make such a motion.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, with that change, is there any other changes to the agenda for this evening?
No, I move that we approve the agenda.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We'll move on to the minutes. Next section is approval of the minutes. Each of us have received a lengthy package of all our minutes. We spent a lot of time in that, and this wasn't even the executive session. Did everyone have a chance to review them, and would anyone like to make any additions, corrections, or deletions? Sir?
The only correction I want to make, and it's very minor, thank you, Madam Secretary, for doing a great job. It's page 3, in the middle of page 3, under Finance Director's Report, the last sentence. The 3.625, that's percent, right? Just add the percentage mark.
What? Very good. Anything else? Anyone else? Someone like to make a motion to accept the minutes?
I move we accept the meeting minutes as just amended, corrected.
Second?
Second. Oh, God.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Sorry. Okay. Next section of the agenda, guest and audience comments. I'm going to begin by doing a response to a question that happened at our last meeting from Mrs. Dickinson. Written response and follow-up to the question asked by Terry Dickinson. She inquired about police officers working to assist Eversource and whether the town received compensation for those hours. I stated that I would record the question and respond at this meeting, and for the current year, this is year to date, receipts and receivable of $35,087. Officers have been paid $26,877. Net to the town of Haddam, East Haddam. I'm not the only one getting that confused, right? Is $8,210. Private duty rate is $62 per hour, and the rate for non-town events, the billing amount is $83.30 an hour. I could give you this so you can have a copy for your record.
You gotta cross off the last sentence, so that's to something else.
Okay, with that, I'd like to open the floor for any questions or comments. Being that there are none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, correspondence. I don't have any correspondence here. Okay, good. Next section, Chairman's Report. First section, Tax Collector's Report. Everyone received a copy of this. This is for your review and information. Any questions from the board?
Last month it was inquired, and Denise is here, who pays the collection fees for the collection service. It is the delinquent taxpayer who pays those fees for the service.
Thank you for getting the answer to that. Do any of the board members have any comments or questions on this report? Very good, thank you. Just want to continue to comment how well we're doing on that, so keep up the good work. Next item is Board of Assessments Appeals, fall report.
I invited them to attend tonight. They may have had a conflict, but they've adjusted their, with auto appeals, they've adjusted down $8,300.
Are there any questions or comments on this section? We've all had a chance to look through that.
I do,
Mr. Loria.
Mr. Chairman. Section 3 comments said no real issues that surfaced during the appeal session. Session was the lowest number of appeals in the last 25 or so years, stated here. I would advise them in the future to not do an appeals day on a holiday weekend. I don't know if that had an impact on it or not, or people were just happy with their tax bills, but I would say in the future to not do it on a Labor Day weekend, pick another Saturday.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a comment or observation, Mr. Best?
Now I have a question. I'm not familiar with the appeal process or the nature of the appeals in the past year or even 25 years. I find it interesting that all 5 appeals were automotive related, and they were all reductions in assessments. What was the root cause of the appeals, and what was the justification for the reduction in assessments?
It's on the last page,
It was kind of cryptic.
They have,
mostly mileage.
The complaint and action columns.
I imagine there's a lot of cars in East Haddam that have high mileage and conditions resulting from that. I thought there might be something else. All right, thank you.
Very good. Anyone else? Okay, we can move forward then. The next item is the Board of Finance Annual Report. Each of you received a copy of this. This is, I'll say, in draft format. Cindy put together the narrative, and the numbers on the right side are just an example of what it would look like. But just wanted to get some feedback from our board before we move forward. Any thoughts, observations on this?
and I guess part of your question last month, I will fill in all the blanks.
I think it's a very good one-page summary.
Right.
Therefore, more people will probably read it instead of 20 pages.
Cindy, what date do you need to determine the?
You'll all
close on
need to
this?
vote on this next month, and I'm still sending out requests for people who are not returning their annual reports. So I'm gonna have to complete it in the next couple of weeks in order to get, before your next meeting, in order for you to approve it and get it to the printer, because it needs to be approved in December.
Okay, so we'll have this on next month's agenda.
The whole report will be on next month's agenda.
Got it.
And just a preview, we got one of the professional photographers that came through and did the building. I think this one was for the architect or the construction manager, was generous enough to share us a nice picture of this building.
Very nice.
See that?
So would I ask the board to review this after this meeting, and if you have any thoughts, please include them and forward them to Cindy or myself, and we can kind of wrap it all in and update it. Very nice, thank you. Okay, next section is subcommittee reports. I'll begin by with communications, but I do want to observe that I did see the article published by Communications Subcommittee. Very, very nice job, and I want to commend you. But I'll let you guys brief us. Is there anything to report?
Well, we also want to thank the East Haddam News for putting it all on one page. I know some other articles got split up, but ours got in one page. So really appreciate that. And the next article we're working on is about the fund balances themselves. Gave them an overview of the importance of looking at the fund balances. Now we're going to give them fund balances in detail. That's our next article, which will probably come out in November, the way things are going.
Excellent.
A little bit behind schedule.
And our next meeting is the 25th.
Yeah, a week from this Thursday.
So you'll give me an agenda.
Yes,
So I'll follow through.
yes. I forgot to give you an agenda. I sent a request for
And
a
I
room.
also- Yeah, and if you can also get me, I want to make sure I have all the minutes to forward to Deb as well, so maybe you and I can just touch base and make sure I have all those minutes.
Okay,
Very good. On the increasing revenue, we're at a holding pattern right now. There's a couple of things we've talked about. There's been no further movement in that area, but I've spoken with the first selectman about getting together with one group in particular to see if we could maybe invite them to participate in the pilot program. So more to come. Next item, long-range planning. As you know, this was a subcommittee that was kind of gathering some steam, and what's actually happened from that point is a committee has been formed at the selectmen's level.
We got a point on Wednesday.
Where's mine? So the first selectman is forming a committee called the Financial Needs Roundtable. And the way it works is it's going to have members of all the respective boards, the Board of Finance, the Board of Education, Planning and Zoning, and participants from each political party. And the idea to try to project needs of our town going forward. So it's a really great thing. It's something that has happened in the past, and Emmett is reconstituting that again to move forward. Our two members at present will be participating in that and representing the Board of Finance. And,
And we have to figure out who your members are.
okay. Yes, do you have a comment or observation?
I just wanted to say that I went to the school capital improvement
Oh, yes, please.
presentation. Was not a lot of people. Todd was there, I was there, and the Board of Ed, and a handful, literally, of other people. But this is a huge thing. So they're looking at the high school roof, which is already in the capital plan, air conditioning, the track, irrigation for the high school and the middle school, baseball, softball, and soccer fields, the elementary school exterior, which is doors, windows, and brick work, and then the question of, what do you do with 3 schools versus 2 schools versus, whatever. The total, it's very hard to read on this, was about $10 million. Oh wait, that's just for the schools. They don't have the numbers on here. Oh wait, here we go, okay. So, to close the elementary school and change to a K through 8 or K through 7 is around $10 million. The air conditioning is about $772,000. The track proposal is around $1 million plus or minus. Irrigating the fields is another $1 million plus or minus, and the elementary school exterior is about $1.1 million. So I think that is a huge reason why we need this financial needs roundtable to put it all together and whatever else needs to be looked at. But there's a whole lot going on.
And the reason, and it's very true, because each respective group, boards of education and libraries and other organizations, all have needs that are coming forward in our town. The overriding principle of this organization, or this roundtable, is to really assess those needs, and let's just assume all of them are acceptable. It's just like we just can't do everything, so we have to prioritize, and then as a finance board, we have to try to allocate the resources. So it's really great. The timing is good that we're doing it now. We want to make sure all of these things are on the radar and given the attention they deserve. Thank you very much for doing that and attending. Did anyone else want to add anything to that section?
Yes, yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I too was very disappointed at the lack of public attendance at that meeting. It was a very good meeting, a very important presentation. So what can we do to get folks to come out and go to these things? It's extremely important. You can't see it all on YouTube, or you can't read it all in the newspaper, because what we did, we asked questions, and there was interaction between the Board of Education superintendent and the audience. We need more of that, because the more people know what's on our plate, the better priority we can come up with, and more support. So the town needs to really think about, including ourselves, how to get people to come out to these meetings. I can't emphasize how important that is. People expect to read all about the newspaper, or on YouTube, or Facebook. Facebook isn't great for data. I'm not supportive of that, but Facebook has its purpose, but I don't think that's one of them. but it's most important to come to the meeting and hear it firsthand. And so we gotta think about how we can do that. And roadside signs. I don't think a lot of people knew about the meeting, frankly. And some people heard about it like 2 days prior. And I forgot how I happened to hear about it. I guess it was here at this meeting or some other meeting I heard about it. So we need to really get out the word. And I suggest roadside signs, not just 1 or 2, 5, spread around town to get the word out. And particularly if we're talking this kind of money, I don't think anybody has any idea how much money we're talking about. Until Tracy pointed out tonight, we're talking millions. So we need help from the community. Thank you.
Very good. Anyone else? The last section is the financial policies.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you do need to appoint 2 members to that financial needs roundtable.
We have to do that today?
Selectmen are gonna do it Wednesday night, so that they can schedule a meeting.
Okay, so, well, we'll just go with the group that we have now. So, we're gonna make, it'll be Greg and Tracy.
They can't, it has to be a member
Oh.
of each party.
We have to have one from each party. Do we have a volunteer from Democrat Party?
I did it last time.
Is that a, is that a?
And which of the Republicans want it?
It would be unfair
Want to do it?
and cruel and unusual punishment to make Mr. Dutch do it twice, so I would agree to do it.
Okay.
If that's okay with everyone.
Yes.
I already wrote your name down.
So
Thank you.
we'll let them know Harvey and Tracy?
Yes. No, do we need to make a motion? Or are we just appoint?
It's just an appointment.
Okay.
The selectmen just need to know who they're voting for.
Very good.
Yes,
Yes.
because it's the way that the financial needs roundtable reads, the chairman or his designee.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for reminding me of that. Financial policies. Mr. Thomas, would you like to give a update on that section that we've been working so hard on?
Yes, we have made, well, let me back up and take a running start. We developed and presented to the board, the so-called fund policies, general fund and so on, which was approved. And we have been working on, debt management policies. And I would be happy to be corrected. But to my way of thinking, one of the most important things that we anticipate including in debt management policies are 3, perhaps 4 ratios of debt service to revenues and so on, so that the town can have some sense of, and that wouldn't be a number, it'd be a range of numbers. Our hope is to be able to find ratios that we can propose that are authenticated by, approved by bonding agencies and so on, so that as we manage our debt, we're not just going by the seat of our pants, but have some sort of professional opinions as to how much debt we can afford, how much debt would be too much, and on the flip side, when we're being too chintzy with debt, when there are worthwhile projects or improvements that need to be done, but we're just not doing them because we're afraid of taking on debt that we could afford to take on. So debt service we've been working on, and the other is a budgeting policy that much of it, I think we already have been doing, without writing it down in a step-by-step policy. But one of the things that's emerged that I think we're going to recommend, is to include in a budget policy, a 5-year financial planning model, so to speak, so that we're not always just looking at what do we have to do for the next fiscal year, but what are the implications and ramifications going into the future, say 5 years. I mean, after 5 years, it gets pretty fuzzy, but, so that we could have the benefit of looking at what do we know that's coming down the road in a year or 2 or 3. What best estimates can we make about the financial environment, not just the town of East Haddam, but are interest rates gonna go to 20%, or are they gonna fall to minus 10%? What's going on at the state level and so on. And to do that and have it available before we begin the nitty-gritty of putting together and reviewing department by department budgets. So we have some idea of, with any luck, some idea of sort of where it makes sense to end up, taking into account what's gonna happen in a year or two, so we don't get caught in the trap of not having foreseen, and therefore in a year having to collect a lot more taxes or cut a lot of services. Did I say that halfway understandably? It was kind of rambling, but
No,
Makes
that was
sense.
great.
but that's where we're at, and now
I think-
I'm gonna ask for help. But I'm thinking we have a good shot of bringing a rough draft of the budgeting materials forward in November. Is that, my colleagues are shaking their heads yes, so they made a promise, I didn't.
And to add to his observation, it was one of those kind of things that when we started talking about and looking at some of the pieces we put together, it really got our little subcommittee all excited, and we were like, wow, this would be very useful to have certain policies in place, projections and things available to us today. So when we're looking at our budgeting process when we come into the fall, we anticipate these things in advance. And it works perfectly in hand with the financial needs roundtable. As they're looking for capital, we're also looking at operational and trying to merge them together so that we can be very cognizant of where we are going in the future and try not to just, and to be aware of what our revenues are. So, yeah, great report. Thank you. It's been a good group. All right, any comments, questions on any of those reports? I'd like to move forward with the first selectman report. Mr. Lyman, would you mind, I'll have you do the update to the weather events, and then if you can touch on some of those other items in general, whatever you can. I know you're not completely prepared tonight, but whatever you can for us, please.
First of all, to do each of those for a full-page report is gonna take a week out of my month all by itself.
Well, not in the detail that he
I
was
understand,
speaking, but
but-
just to keep us apprised of where we're going there.
I'm gonna try to do that regardless. Weather event, needless to say, back on the 25th, we got nailed. We got hit hard. 17 miles of gravel road gone. Neptune Avenue gone. Robbie Road over here, there's a culvert there that they're doing, I hope tonight, I don't know, are they on it tonight?
We're having issues, so,
I'm sorry?
we're having issues right now, so I'm dealing with Eversource as we speak, so.
And Eversource is not gonna disconnect the wires?
Correct.
And we can't do it without that. We were out all weekend contacting people over there to get them ready for it, because it was gonna be overnight with no power and no access to the end of the road. We'll have to touch base again with them. We've been trying to put it together. We're submitting to FEMA tonight. Now, FEMA will give us low-interest loans if we hit certain thresholds. And the last I heard, it was 800,000 per county, 5.2 million for the state, and then a declaration of an emergency situation, disaster, which I have done for the town. And I think we're gonna hit those. Our submission is, for the town, is about $3.7 million of damage. If we do that all with our town crew, it's gonna be over a year before we do it. So we're gonna need, bring in vendors, bring in contractors. That's what we have on Robbie Road tonight. The additional damage that we're looking at could be upwards of another $1 million. The Goodspeed individuals, the family that had Neptune, the culvert blowout and deposited on their property. It's gonna be enormously expensive to clean up and take care of that. Robbie Road, very expensive. We're moving as fast as we can with that. We've got our crew trying to have one group, 3 people, each afternoon there for overtime. That's gonna become expensive. So we're looking at an awful lot. The downside of it is we had the 6 inches, that's a 1% storm, once in a century storm. It initially started it. Last Thursday, we had additional rain. The damage was done to Robbie Road was increased by that storm. They're talking about thunderstorms tonight. Very likely going to increase damage wherever it's already occurred. And we're in the second half of October, which traditionally is a very stormy, very wet period of time. The weather's in the process of changing, and we see storms out of the northwest, storms out of the southeast or southwest, and political history for me is you have to replace all your signs every year for the second half of October. So I anticipate we're going to see a great deal more weather. It'll be very expensive. You're going to be called upon to support whatever you can for us.
As it pertains to the finances of our town, I have 2 questions, and then I'll open up the board to ask you some additional ones if there are any. The first question I have is, I know of the magnitude that this storm damage has caused. And maybe somebody can help me with the FEMA money, but my understanding, you made a statement on that, and I just want to clarify how the FEMA money actually works.
Yeah, because there was 800,000 in damage per county and 5.2 million in damage in the state to be a qualifying event.
That's threshold amounts to qualify.
And so when FEMA releases monies, is it?
Low interest loans is basically what you can anticipate.
Or when we've gotten grants in the past, they've been at 75% and our income to match the 25. We don't even.
It's not a outright grant, it's a loan?
Some grants,
We don't know yet because they're still gathering data. We late this today, we're put together data, and Craig was getting it up to FEMA because they're trying to quantify if we've had an event. And that's, until we know that, we're kind of at a loss. But we've, in our community, have almost met the threshold of 5.2 million.
So we're probably not going to be so concerned about an event. We all agree that happened. And the magnitude of it is considerable. We've already estimated the cost of materials is over $3.5 million,
Right,
not even
we've
including
already
the labor.
to date spent $85,000 and we haven't even put a dent in the repairs. Those are just putting out fires to prevent more damage.
So my question about FEMA, and this is probably ignorance on my part, is it money to help us, where they give it to us, or in a grant form, or is it a loan? And low interest is like USDA, for instance. What is it? What kind of terms are we as a board have to expect?
We don't know that yet because I don't think people in Beth and M&O2 appreciated the magnitude. East Haddam was probably the hardest hit in the state. Our county has had other towns with bridges washed out. Lebanon or Salem got hit very hard as well. So So normally when we have an event like this, FEMA's automatic, Storm Sandy, Irene, they already know, the magnitude, and they start bringing finance directors in and telling us what we need to do. They haven't qualified it yet. They're trying to do that now. All the towns had to have data in by the end of today. And then hopefully they can take it from there.
Now, in the meanwhile, you're putting Band-Aids on everything. How long can you do that? And really, what are we looking at?
Well, Neptune Avenue, we can't, every time it rains, we probably lose on the Legion side another foot down the embankment. So we're gonna start encroaching not only on the Legion driveway entrance, but the home across the street. We're gonna start making that unstable. So that's not something we can leave open for the winter unless we stabilize the slope, which would be very expensive, or just repair it and do it the right way. But that's probably $500,000 job.
We're in the process right now, through our lawyer, getting a construction easement to go across the property to access Neptune Avenue. As it stands now, we can't even get to it.
In Hemlock Valley, we will lose that road if we don't stabilize.
Closed Hemlock Valley. Go down, and there's a lovely home with a bridge across to it, about halfway down on the right. That little slope is threatening to go below that. We simply close the road pending stabilization or repair or whatever. We don't even know what yet.
Are you coming to this board now or soon in search of additional resources?
Yes,
I would say yes.
I think until you know what FEMA's can do, it's either it's a problem or an enormous problem. So hopefully FEMA will qualify it. Again, I think when the storm hit, and Beth can add to it, and Emmett, people didn't realize just how broad reaching it was across the whole town. You saw here and there, but when Beth and Steve started doing assessments, it was then that we started talking about FEMA, and Clinton lost a bridge, and Chester lost a bridge. So for Middlesex County's threshold, we're well within it. It's a matter of the state will come up to $5.2 million in damage.
There's so much that you don't realize that occurred. I walked out, we had people from DOT here, we were gonna go down and look at the bridge on 151 they're working on right now, planning, on Shady Brook. Walked out to the fence here along the wall, the stone wall we've got, and realized that a good chunk of the stone wall has been washed out behind. And that's a state problem, we're not gonna repair it. But there's damage that no one had an inkling was there. And that's what we're finding. We've got some of the public works crew is out just driving every mile of every road, filling in next to the asphalt. Because anybody that pulls off is gonna drop into that, have a major problem. We've gotta get that washout done. Their crew is working hard, they're working long hours, trying to get ahead of this. We don't even know exactly what we're dealing with yet.
So, getting back to where I'm going with this, it looks like we're exhausting her budget. We're gonna need to look at contingency monies
We're
or
spending
some
money
extra
for
money.
other things.
So, will we as a board have information to what that amount might be and what might be anticipated shortly?
I think we have some preliminary assessments, but as Emmett indicated, they
I mean, we
continue
can't
to inspect.
rebuild, we don't have the money to rebuild all the roads right now, right? We don't have that. We have to expect the FEMA money. Otherwise, we gotta look at something entirely different. However, we do need to do as best as we can to stabilize what we have and protect people and all the rest. And it seems like there's a large expense for that. We as a board would like to just have some preliminary idea what that number is in advance. It's like a snow budget going over, we got 7 blizzards without expectation, and we already went through that. We're gonna have to come up with the extra financing. We would just like to have an idea what that number looks like.
You're at 3 to 4 million right now plus.
I mean, we just come up with that number.
For the for this year's budget, 3 million? Us
Or
spending?
emergency appropriations if it came to that, but that's without FEMA.
Right. I'm talking about it's too premature to go there yet. I'm saying that including FEMA, what are we looking at now to keep everything going until we know for sure? We have to put on Band-Aids right now. We're not gonna go rebuild a road if we know that FEMA can pay for it.
Well, I disagree. We're not gonna leave the public at risk waiting for FEMA.
I didn't say, well, the public won't be at risk if a road is, I'm not saying that. I didn't say not protect life and stuff. I'm just saying rebuilding a project is a big deal and it doesn't happen overnight. I
No,
mean,
no,
when
we're
they
not-
redid the bridge near my house, it was 3 years, so you can put barriers up to prevent things going, and we'll
Right.
know about FEMA in the meantime. What I'm describing is the amount of, we have to come up with money to protect people and make sure we put Band-Aids on stuff so that it doesn't get worse. That's money we have to spend now.
So money in Beth's capital budget, we appropriate money for roads. We have those two budgets, right, Evan? We have the two budgets for roads. And she planned on utilizing the money for other things, so she's drawing from that right now to do, we were calling it triage, they're assessing what needs to be done. So she has the ability to draw from those monies, and we can, I think once we know what FEMA's gonna do, then we can provide you with a greater summary, but she does have some, she has about 500,000 to draw on. But it's then wouldn't be going to where she hoped it to go to, as Emmett had indicated.
We immediately said, checking state statute, and we could do about, what, $20,000 by virtue of state statute in an emergency. Talked to the lawyer, and he said, look, do what you gotta do. This is where we went to Robbie Road, it had to be done. And her indication a moment ago was about $85,000 that's already been gone, that we've gone through that way. We are reaching limits under state statute of what we can do without your authority. And she does have $500,000 sitting there for other projects. I'd like to see her be able to use that and allocate it as she needs. She's being careful, but there are things that have to be done. And certainly within that boundary, permission to move forward and use what you have to on behalf of the roads.
And Beth and I are both, and are very well, as well as the emergency management director, Craig Mansfield, are very well versed in how to track FEMA. So we're tracking everything as though we have FEMA money.
Okay, so that's where I was going. And
As a word
so
of
as a board, what do you need from us tonight? Do you
How do
need
we help you?
a motion from us saying that we authorize you to use other monies allocated toward this area? I need a little guidance on
Use
this.
as needed on an emergency basis. And you can set a boundary, $200,000 before you gotta come back and talk to us again to justify what you're doing. But I would offer a word of caution. FEMA may or may not step into this. We may not get anything from them. You've had two major hurricanes, one after the other, down south that FEMA is going to be deeply involved in. So their focus is going to be not this trifling area up here, which we got hit hard, but we're almost unique in how hard we were hit. And down there, they've got whole states that have just been devastated. So just keep that in the back of your mind as a caution. Whatever we do, we may find ourselves stepping up to the plate for more than we like.
Is there insurance for this? Like,
Not for roads.
not for roads?
And indeed, the people who have been injured, their insurance companies are almost without exception saying, act of God. And you have to prove negligence on the part of the town. And some are gonna try to do that, I'm sure. But basically, this is not something that's covered. The blowout from Neptune Avenue may be upwards of $70,000 or $80,000 to clean up the mess it created
In the yard.
in the yards. That's a big deal for a homeowner.
So before we make the motion, I'd like to ask the board, Tracy, I'll start with you. Do you have any questions or comments you want to talk to Emmett about or anyone about this?
well, I just was curious about the insurance or anything, but, so if FEMA says no, then then somewhere the town is on the hook for,
Perhaps get some state grants for rebuilding Neptune Avenue, perhaps.
and then do you go, like, do you do, like, bonded, or what do you do?
That would be for this board to figure out.
So we could be looking here, let's say it's 5 million on the high end, and we get the potential, let's say we get the 75% match, we're still looking at 1.25 million. Best case scenario.
Right.
Worst case, we're looking at 5.
However, would you explain?
All of the in-kind, any work our crews are doing, any of our equipment, it all gets assessed.
Right.
We apply, they provide factorizations for the use of any of the vehicles, any equipment. I was indicating when you stepped out of the room that you and I were pretty well versed in filling out the FEMA documentation.
Right, and I would say we've had every piece of equipment in use, every truck in use from Tuesday night, like any time we've been working, so we have plenty of in-kind.
And in-kind is the work that we could even place value with the fire department, volunteer hours, there's a lot of ways to make up the in-kind.
So that money, let's make sure everybody's clear. Grant or loan, irrespective of that, whatever dollar comes in from FEMA, if we spent money on something today and it qualified under that FEMA arrangement, that dollar would be reimbursed to us later on, correct?
75%.
75%, but it was in kind.
Right,
It was just part of our normal operating expense. We're not going into debt to cover that different cost.
hopefully.
This is not unlike a hurricane, and we carefully record all the volunteer time, all the machinery, everything that comes in to be used, and that counts against it. And whether it's Sandy or Irene, we've been through this a number of times.
Anything else, Tracy?
No.
Yes, I have a couple of questions and comments too. You gotta be careful with this kind of work because you can lose your shirt real fast. You gotta make every move count. And I suggest that monies be also authorized for full engineering assessments. I'm sure FEMA's gonna look for the same thing, such that they'll help you prioritize what needs to get done first. We're not gonna do everything at once. I don't think that's gonna happen. So we gotta prioritize our list. And I think we're gonna need, this requires engineering activity. I won't say some more than others, some areas, for example, the Neptune Road Brook Bridge probably needs a lot of engineering, particularly in the foundations. But I suggest that the Board of Finance be sure to authorize you folks to use engineers as much as you need them, because they'll help you minimize the mistakes you can make with a bulldozer or excavator or a bunch of men and women working hard. So I think that you need to do that, particularly with the magnitude of the work you have to do in many locations. And I want to ask a question. I'm confused now. FEMA, is that a grant or a loan?
Until they declare an emergency, we don't know.
It could be either.
We will. For private citizens, it's strictly loans, the way I understand it.
Yeah.
So anyone who had damaged their property, who's looking to FEMA for help, is gonna wind up with low-interest loans. The town, on the other hand, can be looking for grants and loans. And no guarantees at all, and that's why I mentioned what took place down south. There is a massive need down there right now.
So you think the total exposure for the town is 3.7 million, and the total estimated exposure for private citizens is $1 million? Is that what I heard?
That's arguable. Good Street Opera House is a big chunk of that, and what happened to them down there.
That's funny, because that didn't happen in June '82. The water went around behind the building, full up, but it didn't wash out by the street.
Well, it blew out the rehearsal hall, as it did this time.
Yeah.
You can see the water running through. It didn't erode completely
Yeah.
around it as it did this time. It was actually the street that eroded. I can remember Volkswagen down in the hole that was 82.
That's right. That's all I have, sir.
All set?
I was just looking at some of the projects for Public Works right now, and looks like almost everything of sizable value is already ongoing and in the works. How about Petticoat Lane?
Won't be complete until the spring. Had to completely pull off that job, so.
Yeah, so is that a job that we may have to postpone in the name of safety for the other projects?
At this point, the road is completely torn up because we treated it as a full depth reclamation, so we were pulling stumps and destroyed the edges of the pavement.
All right, so it's already, some work has begun. It's just,
We
Considerable amount.
redid the entire drainage system.
Okay.
And removed trees, so at this point, we were about 90% to completion to have the pavers come in and do their share, but we've been completely pulled, and now we're at a point where we can't get a paving contractor in.
If you're looking at the capital report there, Greg.
yeah, that's where it was.
You're on page 7 of 8, the two accounts that uses year-round for road repairs and remediation are the pavement and trim overlay and road improvement materials, and there's a little more than $500,000 in there. Oh, 550, that she could be using, she can draw on, but that means the things that she had planned to do won't get done.
Right, and I was also going to use that for the trees.
Right.
So we're twofold.
Because that is money that gets appropriated annually, and because it's capital, it carries forward. It doesn't go back to the general fund, so she had it earmarked for other things, but
I don't have anything else, Bill.
Thank you. Do you have a comment? Bruce, question? No.
If I understand what has been said so far, you're in the process of, and I hope almost complete, in inventorying work that will need to be done.
We're complete with the damage that has been done, but every time it rains, another cross pipe is getting destroyed
Yeah,
because the head wall has already been washed out. So every time, like this past Thursday, we
Got
had more damage, so.
So, if I understand correctly, then you have an inventory of the work that is gonna need to be done.
Right, and I provided that to Cindy.
And I assume that that list of work that you've prioritized in terms of public safety, or if we don't do it now, it's gonna cost 20 times more because of every rainstorm makes it worse. So the list is somewhat prioritized.
Correct.
Okay.
But it's also prioritized in what I've been authorized to spend. Neptune Avenue is a priority, but I haven't been given authorization
Okay,
to move forward. Robbie Road, we had no choice because those homeowners would be landlocked. So
okay.
we had to move forward. So right now, the work we're doing is not highest on my priority list, it's what we have money for.
And do we have that priority list?
you do not, we can get it to you. And on what Todd had talked about engineering, you have begun some of the engineering process
On Neptune.
on Neptune to have a greater understanding on that as well. So she's already engaged in that.
So is it, do I understand correctly that there may be things that if you had the funds for them at this moment, you would do them?
Differently than we are right now.
Okay, so there may be priority work from an engineering or saving money in the future that's not being done because you don't have money for it, but I have money for this other thing that could sit for 6 months and it wouldn't make a hell of a lot of difference. Is that, I've oversaid it, but is that roughly correct?
Yes.
Although
Okay,
you wouldn't
Well, that-
qualify Robbie Road as that.
Robbie
But that's
Road
That's
will be
emergency,
done.
but
that's certainly not where we wanna be. in my humble opinion,
Wait. I was with you 100% until you said that last comment, so when you said it's certainly where I don't wanna be.
I don't wanna be, I wouldn't wanna see us spending money on, and I may be misunderstanding this, but because it's budgeted and the funds have already been allocated, that we're doing some work over here when there's more important, more priority work over here that we're not doing simply because the funds aren't available.
Now I understand what you're saying, okay, good.
So,
So, and
my
that's, I think,
question
the
then
motion-
is, what do we do to make that right?
And that's going to be my question, and we have to, as a board, come up with a motion to give her more money within the budget. What does
Well,
that have
but
to
not
say?
only give her more money, but I wanna raise the question of, yeah, we need to,
Not giving more money, but allowing her to reallocate the resources we
to the
already
most, to
provide.
the highest priority jobs.
Yes.
Would that be helpful?
I would wanna move forward on Neptune sooner rather than
So, okay, now we got the problem defined.
But you don't have enough money for Neptune.
No, but that is
That would require
we've
this.
done what we can to secure the site, but there are children playing down and jumping inside. So,
In order to fund Neptune, that you would need this board would have to recommend the Board of Selectmen to go to town meeting and appropriate it.
Well, if I understood correctly, you just read off some numbers that the Public Works has for what would be normal road repair maintenance.
But we're already into that 85,000 that's not totally in this report because the bills haven't been paid.
How much money is budgeted for this year for road repairs and ordinary maintenance?
570,000 or
About
something.
500 remaining.
So would a motion to approve the reallocation of those funds to priority road storm repairs up to the amount of $250,000 or something be a way to approach this problem?
I don't think you need a motion to expend the funds because they're approved and they're in there for her discretion for road needs. But it may be a motion supporting moving forward for
But if-
purposes.
If they're already at her disposal, she could be using them right now,
well, that's
but she
right
apparently
now.
feels her hands are tied.
She
So
has-
we have to do it on.
That's what she's
on
been
priority.
using, so you could tell her to do Neptune, you'd have to go to town meeting, we don't have enough money to do Neptune with money we've
On-
spent.
Between now and our November meeting, were we to authorize the Public Works Department to reallocate $250,000 to those jobs that, in their professional opinion, are priority between now, that they can begin between now and November, and we'll come back and see about what needs to be done in November? Would that work? Tell me what you need.
Yeah, that's really
We're
where,
not
that's really where I'm going to, is like,
Before it gets
we
worse.
as a board wanna support this, and we wanna move it forward, I think collectively, we've heard that from everyone. What we wanna do is, we wanna make sure we follow the process as expeditiously as
You
possible.
just don't wanna find yourself in a position that she's partway through a project that you need to go through town meeting to finish funding, and you don't get town meeting approval. That's my,
Okay, so now I have a second question. In order to prevent that and move things along so that kids aren't falling in, breaking their necks on Neptune Avenue or whatever, is it premature to move forward with that, with going to town meeting for a special allocation of, I don't know, $1 million, pick a number, just, I don't have,
in the past, the Board of Finance and the new members have authorized Beth to move forward with certain things with the understanding that if she exceeds budget, you expect her to come back.
but then it takes a month or more to schedule, give notice for, blah, 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 a town meeting.
Right.
And so you're partway through the job and the rains come and wash out half of what you already accomplished. That don't make much sense.
Would it make sense for her to begin moving forward, and then if we have to have the board have a special meeting before your next meeting?
That would
And
be,
that,
I guess,
to
reasonable.
have an update if you need to look to appropriate more funds.
Does that help?
So, I got a little dizzy on this whole thing, like the rain just went through me. So,
She can
right
get-
now, we're giving her permission to use the resources we've already allocated in a way different than originally intended, right? That's what we're gonna talk about. The reason for the special meeting, if she runs out of money, let's say he said 250, let's say 250 is the number to use. If she runs out of 250, then what's the problem?
She has $500,000 available.
Well, but I've spent 100.
Right, yeah, so the only problem I foresee, and we know, I'm not trying to argue about it getting done. You are not, under state statute, allowed to expend monies that are not appropriated. So, to get her started, I think that's a great idea, and then maybe to come back in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because your next meeting's not till the end of November. You have to call a special meeting to get that town meeting process moving when we have greater information. That's, just keep that in your mind, that you may
So,
have to move forward.
Again, maybe this is where I'm getting, and I shouldn't be confused, but if we're not allowed to appropriate those monies, then how are we appropriating those monies?
The money's already appropriated. She has money
Cindy's
in capital.
concerned that Neptune Avenue, because they've already spent, so that'll drop me, what, down to 400?
Right.
So if I start Neptune Avenue and it comes out at 480,000, I can't go over what's already in there. I can use that money any way I want if I apply it to road safety. But if I exceed that, then we would have to go to the town meeting.
Because she's exceeded her appropriation, so you'd have to either look to do a
So
special
if another
appropriation.
road washed out, that I had to pull money to that.
I see.
And I don't want this board in a predicament that monies are spent that are not appropriated.
We don't want to be there either.
I didn't think so.
Mr. Chairman, I'm a little confused myself. Okay, you've got X amount of money in your bank right now, 400,000 roughly,
Yes.
and you think that the cost of completing the job is going to be something? You don't, probably don't know yet,
Right
but.
now, I don't know, because it
Uh-huh.
depends on, I talked to a couple engineers and also contractors, the best way to go about it. It could be 400,000, it could be 500,000, depending on the retaining wall system we choose. So I don't know where exactly it's gonna fall.
Okay, so the $400,000 or $500,000, that's going to be just for retaining walls, not for the footing or the bridge itself? The bridge is.
Well, right now, the existing, it was a 3-foot diameter culvert with no end walls. It didn't fail hydraulically, it failed because of the nature of the watershed, that it clogged and then the water built, and that's what washed it out. So we have to design something, because on Tuesday morning, we went down and that was completely clear. So the rain, the way it happened, blocked that 3-foot opening. and then
With some
submerged it.
logs or something like that, vegetation? Yeah, that's happened
So we
before.
have to design more of a box culvert arch system that has a larger opening that a log won't block it.
Or vegetation.
And then some sort of end wall that if it did get submerged, it would be protected.
Okay. Okay, rule number one, you gotta plan these things out because you don't wanna get $100,000 into the job and find out it's not gonna work.
Oh, we're gonna hire an engineer firm that specializes in this.
Thank you. So, and that engineer will help you plan how the work's gonna be. So you're gonna run out of money at some point, and no matter what you run out, sooner or later, you gotta come back to the town, you gotta show the town a good plan that the people are gonna have confidence in, and that'll make the vote go that much easier. So, the reason I'm asking these questions is, good, you've hired an engineer, you're talking to engineers and talking to contractors, so you're gonna get good help on this, and that's the most efficient expenditure of money for a job like this. So, the sooner you can estimate a solid number, the better off we're gonna be financial planning. Meanwhile, you've got 400,000 in your own bank, The bank's gonna run dry at some point, you're gonna come back to us for more money. So when you come back to us, you're gonna come back with a plan to finish the job. What I'm concerned about is the 400,000, will that get you far enough along such that it may take a little time to get our funding available, plus to get the vote, a favorable vote by the town. So are you gonna be in the middle of the job, we run out of money, you're gonna be near the end of the job, I guess is the question I'm asking.
That's why I'm sort of not at a standstill, because we are still working, but do I focus our materials and our personnel somewhere else and I'm never gonna get funding for Neptune? Or do I throw everything into Neptune and then I won't have money to do anything else?
Yeah.
Like right now, we still have one gravel road closed. We're gonna work to make it passable, but it has absolutely no structure to it, so. And that's pretty much all our gravel roads, they've lost their,
And that brings me back to where we started with his idea of the priority list. What is the number one priority you have on the list? Is it Neptune or are those other ones? When you're doing your assessment and,
I don't know how you can prioritize, I mean, Neptune
I mean,
will
is Neptune-
continue to fail, but if we have another major rain event, Mitchell Road, Beebe Road, Salem Road, Ackley, it becomes completely impassable. We lost 4 feet of material on Mitchell Road. There was a car perched in 4 feet.
and I always focus on the safety element. So
So we.
if you were to block off Neptune, you had concrete barriers on each end. Knowing and living in that neighborhood, knowing where it is, it's not, other than maybe the
It's that
property
one
owners.
house that we're getting close to
It's gotta be
It is
stabilized.
losing the slope.
It's getting closer to that one house around the corner there.
But it's not gonna cost $400,000 to stabilize that neighbor's property, is it?
No, I guess you could, but that's the thing, like, do we really wanna spend all that money just to stabilize it and then have to go back and
Rework.
rework and,
Well, that's the nature of construction.
Harvey's
They
point.
do that when they build new buildings. I think, I like where you're going, Bill. We've got a lot of safety concerns around the town with this damage, right? Not just one spot, there's many spots of safety
Right.
concerns. And I think with the money we have, we gotta get the biggest bang for our buck. If it means fixing Mitchell Road and the other roads so they're not dangerous or more impassable. Meanwhile, we spend some amount of money to stabilize Neptune. Gotta stabilize it against a concern. But the rest of the money we spent on the rest of the town, and then we come back with some plans for Neptune, which will require finite money, we're gonna be more confident how much it's gonna cost, then we go back to the town. But I think we can't forget about the other towns, other roads in the town.
right, and I think I can give my priority list. And then the board of selectmen will decide what, I don't think I have that authority to.
So that's a good point. So if we authorize a priority list to come into play from us, that'll free up the monies. And then that goes to your group, the Board of Selectmen, and then you will agree on that priority list. We just want to ensure that, as Todd just articulated, that there's more bang for the buck. We have a limited pool of money here. We can't fix it all right now. We have to just expend it in the most beneficial manner. My concern is Neptune Avenue is not very utilized, right? I don't want to see anybody get hurt, and I don't want to see anybody lose their house. That would be horrible. Yet, I know those other roads are being utilized all the time, and when we wash them out, we don't have the money to spend for them. We're gonna have a real problem with all the citizens that live in those areas. So you'll take that same analysis is really the question. We can free up the money for the priority. You're gonna develop a priority list and it goes to the Board of Selectmen. Is that how I understand this conversation kind of moving
I
along?
think that's how it should go, I don't feel like I
I
have
would
the,
imagine that's how we'd have to handle it.
because I don't think
The
we'll
problem
be
with
able to.
Neptune is the erosion that's taking place as it works its way back. And there is 1 or 2 houses that are quite close.
That's why I said stabilize it. Don't rebuild it yet, but stabilize it. And spend the rest of the money,
Stabilize it. How do you-
Well, I mean, we stabilized the electrical pole going in with 50 yards of riprap, so, I mean, there are ways to do it, but and just, it depends where you could spend $100,000 to stabilize it, or spend $500,000 to fix it.
All right, before we move
That's
forward, this
not
is
my-
a really kind of high mark in our conversation. Todd and I both vocalized our opinion. I would like to hear from the other members. Tracy, what are you thinking?
I mean, I don't know how to fix a road or do any of that. My concern is safety, my concern is, making sure that it doesn't get worse. And yes, sometimes you have to spend money to make it from getting worse and then go back and fix the whole problem. I'm not saying that the money that you spend to make it from getting worse is bad money. I think it's good money. I think you have to think about it that way too. This is overwhelming, like just trying to figure out how to, the order in which you're gonna do all this is insane. You've got pavement and shim overlay and road improvement materials is what I think you're looking at for your things. I mean, I would spend that money like that's the money that you have to spend. So whatever it was, 500, 400,000 or something, but I guess it would have to go to town meeting for us to then take any more money.
Yeah, so I'm talking about the
Right.
initial allocation of allowing her.
I
What's your
say-
thought on the direction she should take with that?
Yeah, like, use the funding that's there for roads, which is in two accounts to me, which at this point is, started out over 500,000 and now she's used whatever she's used, but
Do you think it should go all to Neptune, or do you think it should be
I have no
focused on some of
idea.
the other roads?
That's not
Based
my
on
call.
a priority list?
That's not my call. That's not our call. Our call is to say, here's the money you have, you go use it the way the way you think it needs to be used. I don't think shoring up Neptune and then having to go back and fix it is bad money.
Can't do it anyway, you're right.
So that's my opinion. I'm not gonna tell her how to fix it.
Got it.
I have no idea how to fix it.
Great. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Great.
Yeah, my direction is use the funds from those two accounts, and for us to get our process going immediately, knowing that there will be more funds necessary. And sooner we get that process going, the better. We know they're coming, we just don't know for which roads, but when you put the whole nut together, we're gonna have to act sooner than later.
And what about the guidance of what she should consider? She should go through a triage and try to get those more traveled roads? Even though Neptune might involve spending some money, that would be unrecovered.
That's for Emmett and Beth and the crew. I mean,
That's
I
fine.
used Mitchell Road last week. It looked great. Thanks, great job. And I've seen your guys around town. They are doing a great job. Do you have the human resources to pull all this off?
No.
I was
Because
concerned about that as
we-
well.
we
So we'll be
did
doing
discuss
contract.
from November.
Bruce, you gotta leave it to the professionals.
Yeah.
Ask, tell us what you need for money, and we'll see if we can get it to you.
I think we've kind of come to something that might be summed up. That in order to give Public Works to make sure that they feel that they have the proper authorization, that we authorize them to repurpose the money in the two accounts that would be used for ongoing road maintenance to whatever projects that they and engineers in their professional judgment feel are most important and the priority right now. And second, that I think Greg has the right idea, that we should, assuming that that money's gonna run out before we'd like it to, that we should get ourselves organized as soon as possible to be prepared to go back and to go through the steps to reauthorize more funds as needed.
All right, so, great job. What you said in the first statement, can you re-say that in a motion?
I would move that we authorize
Authorized to repurpose funds in the two accounts
yes,
for ongoing roads maintenance
Is that an acceptable, does that work, Cindy, to qualify us? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Well, I must, now, yeah,
I'm gonna come back to the second
Can I
part.
just say
No.
one
Yes.
thing?
that's what I
also?
wanted to ask.
My priority list will change if I'm told that I'm only getting $800,000 or I'm getting 1.2 million. So
That's fair.
it's hard for me to prioritize. I wouldn't.
Well, what
like
we're doing now
Sarah
is,
Potter say,
all we
"I
can
won't
give you
do
right
that
now
to-
is the
I'll
400.
stabilize it if I'm not gonna get it."
Right.
All we're authorized to offer now, though, is the 400. So
Correct.
we're gonna, that's gonna be the second thing, is that we're gonna make a motion to go to town meeting and do all the other steps. Right, so for now, our first motion is to free up the cash so that you can reallocate those resources. And you'd be able to work with at least getting started, and that's a roadblock for you right now.
Correct.
So is that helpful?
All right, so, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, now the second thing is, what do we do, onto his theme, and Greg's, to get this whole thing moving forward? Do we have to ask for something? Do we go to the selectmen? What's the
Need a
process?
priority list first.
You can't go to town meeting with in my mind, a number that
Right.
seems
All
pulled
right,
out
so-
of the air without, and not that it's pulled out, but you're gonna need to be a little more concrete to take it to a town meeting.
How
So-
long does FEMA, do you think FEMA's gonna take? Just a
I would
month?
hope another week or two,
Okay.
usually it's fast.
So within a month, we should know.
But
if
that's why I
FEMA's
was
given us
saying, if
anything.
the board keeps in mind, if we had to pull a special meeting together to get the.
Right.
We can absolutely do that
Right,
without any
yeah,
problem at all.
Yeah,
But the question I'm bringing up now, and to that point, is it would be imprudent for us to make that step because we don't know really what we're dealing with right now. We don't know the cost, we don't know, we need to initiate it. So the only step of initiation that I think would satisfy what you're asking is to say that as soon as FEMA lets us know, which we should know shortly, we as a board should maybe consider a special meeting prior to our next meeting.
And what you-
Is that really the best thing that we could do as a group?
Right, and
Is
then
that-
also with.
So what are you thinking?
I think that, FEMA might take a week or it might take a month. I think that what we should be focused on more is what can we do on our end, which is to get a more concrete assessment of the damages with a best estimate of what it would cost to
Irrespective
repair.
of what FEMA's giving us.
Irrespective of what FEMA's up to, and meet as soon as that's available, at which time we might have an update on where FEMA's at.
All right, I can see where you're coming on, and I would agree with that too. So how realistic is that to have your full list? It's pretty close to being done now, correct?
My list is pretty complete, other than Neptune Avenue and Hemlock Valley are kind of, to get a concrete number, the engineers have to work up what kind of system is gonna be installed with the two of those. I think I'm pretty close on my number, but until you have a design and you get pricing.
Do you want to give us a time idea on that? How much longer would that take to get that information? A week, a month, a couple of months?
A month?
next
So
meeting's in
would it be imprudent for us to put this on the top of our agenda under old business next month, and you'll have that information for us? Would that be,
Right, I would think other than Neptune and Hemlock and Bonfoy, my numbers are pretty solid.
does that work with you? Does that make sense? We don't have the numbers, we don't have the information until, she can't get it to us until next month,
By next month, we mean our next,
board meeting.
which is, forgive me for not memorizing these,
The third in November,
3rd of November?
the third Monday in November because of Veterans Day, so it's on the 19th.
the 19th.
And
Does that
just,
stretch it out too long?
I can see, as soon as I can get numbers, I'll provide them to Cindy and then we have to.
And we want to have a special meeting before that,
Could
we'll
have a
do that.
special.
and Emmett's cautioning me on FEMA saying I'm being a little too optimistic with everything else going on. My past practices, they're pretty fast, but he's just cautioning that they can.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
For what it's worth, for the homeowner loans, last May we had a line of storms come through, sky turned green, if you remember that. They've just awarded FEMA benefits for homeowners within the past week. Took that long. You've got the 2 hurricanes down there, they're gonna be busy. And whatever happened to us, which is very significant to us, even on a statewide basis, most of the state didn't experience anything like it. Kind of isolated down here.
Okay.
I think to Harvey's point, the important thing is getting a valid estimate of cost. The more valid it is, the more clear it is, the better sell it's gonna be. As soon as we get that, we need to go to work, whether FEMA or no FEMA. We need to go to work, but we need the valid estimate first. As soon as we get that, we should have a meeting.
Now, the only difference in the long run, if we have to do it all on our own, we may use our own public works, put a man or 2 on, and it's gonna take us a year. If we can hire contractors and depend on that, we can move a lot faster. And that's one of the big questions, just how are we gonna do this?
Again, if you have good solid plans, you can make that decision, whether it's gonna be a private contract with a fixed cost and fixed time
We know the
period.
costs
Or,
associated with each.
yeah, that's right, we can make a better decision.
Anything else on that matter? Anybody want to make? Yes.
I think 2 quick points. One is, you wouldn't want to wait an extra month to get your estimate refined down to the nearest 1,000. I think the nearest 100,000 kind of
Case,
approach would
yes,
be
that's
right.
right.
And the second is, you say you're pretty well, got the numbers reasonable, except for 3. So is the 3.7 that we heard earlier this evening, the number roughly,
Roughly including those that,
including those? And it would take, it's gonna take a couple of weeks to firm those up a bit better?
Correct.
Okay, then I'm good.
Anything else you want to cover?
You know, the trees remain a problem. There are many towns that are just ignoring it. We're a little more proactive, and they are gonna be there, and they are gonna be a problem, and we're working with that. Transfer hasn't completely disappeared, that's starting to emerge again as an issue for me, and looking at it. But this weather has been the biggie, and depending on where the weather goes over the next week or 2, I may be able to get focused on other things, I may have to come back and focus on the weather. Because this is October, it's the second half of October. We are doing the financial needs, and if I could touch on that.
Please.
I can find the paperwork on it. Changed a little bit from what I thought. You had indicated we should have a crew together for that. It's myself, Harvey, Tracy now from Board of Finance, Brian Perry, and Jill Kelly and Eric Anderson from the Board of Education, and Prairie Brownell. That's the what it looks like we're going to be approving tomorrow night. And the 2 changes were Bruce and yourself. Looking at dates, reaching out to what might happen, it looks like November 14th is the first date that really kind of comes together where everybody's available. And we have to keep in mind that we're going to need Brian Reese and Cindy there. And so they're not named as members, but they do need to be there. So November 14th, I believe,
We gave Brian a heads up on that this
yeah,
afternoon.
and he seemed to indicate that he could be there for the 14th.
Talking night meetings?
Night meetings. And this is, could be an organizational meeting more than anything else, just to get together and really determine when we can meet, how often we should meet, where do we go from here. And the purpose of this is to try to look forward 10 years. What are the financial needs going to be? They're going to be very different from what we did 10 years ago. They're going to be there, and they're going to be substantial. And the real issue is going to be from the Board of Finance, as we did way back then. What can we afford? what kind of a borrowing level can we handle? Where do we want to be? And I have a feeling it's not going to be nearly as high as it was back then. I think they said $20 million is the limit back then. How do we get all these projects done within that number? I would imagine we're looking to do the same thing and get ready to move forward.
Thank you. Questions? Anyone on this side? Okay, going to move forward on our agenda. Finance Director report.
Okay, September year-to-date budget report. Expenses are tracking, we're through 25% of the year, our expenses are tracking at 16%, keeping in mind that there's a lot of expenditures that happen in the fourth quarter, but there's nothing to red flag or concerns with expenditures at this point in time. Revenues. Tax, so on page 3 of 8, we're at 46% of the budget in collecting. If you look at suspense, you can see that the benefits of the collection agency, because it was $1,200 budgeted for suspense, and Denise has collected $9,981. And our tax collection fees, we had upped them. She's collecting fees for the reprints and such that you're aware of. So this time last year, there was 141 in collection fees, and we collected 1,782 as of September. So reaping the benefits, if you will, of the increase of those fees. Interest income is not as high as it was last year, but it's looking better than it had for many years. We've budgeted 24.5 and we've already collected 9,100 in 3 months. If you go to page 4 of 8, building department fees, 68,000. There has been a lot of new construction. I took some time and reviewed building permits with the building department. And just a note, I record the cash receipts. If you were to go in and ask them, permits issued, they have permits issued and cash collected. So they don't consider it a permit fee until they issue the permit, whereas we collect the cash immediately and deposit it. So just a nuance there. Land use fees, he's already collected 1/3 of the fees, although it was a little higher last year. Town clerk fees are doing all right. Conveyance, she seems on track. Transfer station fees are ahead of last year. So some of the fees are doing very, very well. Legal, page 5, we spent $6,600 this year, so we're faring better than we did this time last year. And then you have the capital reports, and I've tried to give you comments throughout as to where we stand on each of those items. Another note on revenue, Bill had given you the receivables and receipts to date. We budgeted 25,000, what was that number?
The number on the,
We budgeted 25,000 and we are already at 35,000. If I count the receivables and what we received in October. So special duty is tracking very well, so. Obviously, the road issue is a concern, but as far as your budget to actual, everything's targeting that.
okay. Next thing were the important budget dates.
You know, the board would like to look at possible budget workshop dates so I can flush out the budget calendar and get that out there for everyone.
Let's engage the conversation real quickly.
I know last year you had Saturday budget workshops, you had some evenings. I didn't know what the board was looking at for this year, just to try to get some of these on the calendar. Because I would envision before the tri-board, if you want another citizen's guide to go out, it'd be nice to have all those dates in the guide.
Yes. The real question I have for you as members, I just want to see, we've done this now for, I think, 2, maybe 3 consecutive years where we did the workshops on a Saturday. Is that, I want to just go around the room and find, is that acceptable? Is that a fair way to go? How about I run this side?
Yeah, it's fine.
I think it's very good to have both Saturdays and evenings. It gives a greater flexibility for the people in town to attend. So some people like Saturdays, some people like weeknights, so I think what we did last year, we should do again.
Okay.
So would it be okay with the board if perhaps Bill and I looked at some opportunities and sent the dates out to all of you, and you can just let me know they're good, so we get them on the calendar. And also make sure we have a meeting on.
Good. I'll do that. Anything else, Cindy? Very good. Any liaison reports?
Yes, I met with the building department last week, and to add a little bit more to the revenue story for the building department, year to date, it's a 200% improvement over last year at the same period, 200%. And what's driving that is the number of permits is up by 67% over last year. Frankly, it's over the years before as well, because it was kind of the same year after year. But it appears that more people are applying for permits and paying for them. And there is, as Cindy said, there is some construction in town, enough value. So that increase, that 67% increase in permits amounts to a 200% increase in revenues for year to date. On top of that, the Board of Selectmen back in July, I believe, approved a permit fee increase, right? And I don't know how much that was. I missed that.
Yes, we remember.
Yeah, I don't.
And that has not gone into effect in these numbers. That
Oh,
goes
really?
into effect October 1st, so that's not even into play here.
So what this says, this is pure value coming into town as far as grand list. This should show up on our grand list as well as the revenues. So as you saw in Cindy's report, year-to-date last year was 22,000. Year-to-date this year is 68,000. And I have to say that Ruth's numbers are about $90 different from yours. So it's pretty close. So that's and one other thing, the building department is looking at, along with land use and the other departments, a more efficient means of collecting and controlling and documenting the permits. It's something other towns have done. It would be a little bit of a capital investment, a part of the town, but it should to see a big payoff in efficiency and better record keeping. And more about that. They're not done with their study yet, so I'm not going to give out any numbers at this point. But they're working on that. They'll be coming to us pretty soon. Well, maybe early next year, or sometime at the appropriate time when we have that study done. But it promises to be a better deal for the town and the residents and the taxpayers. That's all I have. Thank you.
Todd, do you have an estimate of how much it's adding to the grand list?
No, I do not. I was curious about that too, and I haven't needed to do a little research.
Thank you.
But I hopefully have it done for our next meeting.
It's a good sign.
Yeah.
Permits are up.
Any other liaison reports? I participate in the Crisis and Communications Subcommittee, and we're working pretty hard in that group. I can tell you they brought to the selectmen the approval of the communications firm that we had allocated resources to, the Sullivan and Lashane, and they approved it, and they were hired as our the group to actually put together a crisis communication strategy for our town. So that did move forward, and we're still ongoing with looking at the security needs of the schools and other areas around here. Making good progress though, and it's a good group. That's all. Anyone else? Okay, that concludes liaison, old business. So we've been carrying this forward on our agenda for many months, but in front of you, you have a plan of conservation and development. And it says suggestions because I guess we could call this draft, but I'm assuming everyone had the opportunity to review this. And if there aren't any changes, we made the changes last month, so if there aren't any changes that you would like to see happen today, I'd invite someone to make a motion to approve this, so we could submit this.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Well, yes. Just so that we're clear on what we're doing here, what we're really moving to do, as I understand it, is to forward these suggestions to the Planning and Zoning Commission, who are responsible for actually preparing the plan of conservation and development. And they, as would make sense, have been soliciting input from boards and commissions and citizens, and this would be the Board of Finance's input.
And as such, would you mind reading the way the motion should state? It's on the bottom part of where it says old business motion.
I got it.
So you have that.
So the motion that was just made,
You're
in effect,
clarifying it.
Just
said
say I amend the motion to state.
to approve the recommended changes to the plan of conservation development, and to forward the recommendations to the planning and zoning commissions, and to incorporate the text of those changes into the minutes.
Second.
That,
That's excellent.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you.
Technically, you have a motion and a second, or you should have a motion to withdraw.
I know,
Yeah, but that's the motion we
but
meant.
you're gonna make the minutes look that way.
Well, you recorded, so I should have withdrawn his motion, and you should withdraw the second.
Or we could
I'm
amend
okay
the,
with that.
we could amend the motion on the
Or
floor.
we can pretend that that's what Todd said.
Anyway,
Why don't we just amend the motion to state the correct,
I'm okay with that.
yeah,
as he stated? And then, all right, all in favor of amending the motion?
Aye.
Any against? Okay, now we could vote on the motion that's on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right, good, now motion passed. That's technically correct. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, keeping us honest.
Next item is you also under new business, that's it for old business. Under new business, we have a grant application authorization for a comprehensive DUI enforcement program for the resident trooper.
Unlike the way the grants are structured in the past, this is 100% funding. There used to be a small town match, this is at 100% funding, with no match.
And how does that money work? Does that put into the police budget for those specific functions, or do they have to do certain things?
In the past, we've actually had a budget line item for DUI enforcement, and we haven't. But, and I was hoping we could discuss this at the financial policies meeting on Thursday morning. We talked about, and I'd love to get to the board for November, creating a special duty, private duty, special revenue fund, and I would love to do the same thing with the grants, so that the monies, any monies like that where we're getting outside receipts, we're paying for the expenses out of that fund, and the money's coming back. So if we're approved for the grant, we expend the funds and then receive reimbursement.
Okay.
Because there's no, like, it doesn't say how many hours this equates to.
I didn't give you the whole grant packet because it was huge.
Really?
Yeah. I can get you the amount of hours.
Would someone like to make a motion on accepting this?
Is there a special thing?
Yeah, gotta read document, right? I move that we authorize the grant application for the fiscal year 2019 Comprehensive DUI Enforcement Program for Resident Trooper.
A second?
Second.
Discussion. Sir?
I have a discussion. DUI, is this strictly alcohol or is it drugs also?
Influence.
Driving.
It's driving under the influence, so it's
influence of anything.
Anything.
All right.
There is some narrative in there.
Because it talks about alcohol, but it didn't talk about anything else, that's why I asked the question. Okay, I'll go with influence.
Any other discussion points? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Last item on the new business was the 2019 meeting calendar draft.
We approved this in November, December, but just to get those dates out there to make sure no one has any issues with any of the dates.
So the only request I have is if you would all just run it against your calendars sooner than later, and then bring it forward if something comes up, like school vacations or holidays or things of that nature that we may have missed. Looks like we addressed those in November and October next year, but anything like that, we'd like to take a shot at it. Okay. Next section, guest and audience comments. Would anyone like to speak? Mr. Dill, please.
Real quickly, Eric Dill, 162. If, hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn, I've offered this already. For Acme Road, if Consumer Reports can offer free of charge for the manning machine on the road to open it back up, we're so willing. And I will offer this again at the selectmen's meeting. I know there's some legality to that. There's some sort of certificate of harmless or whatever we have to do, that's fine. But I'd like to offer that, I know there's some substantial cost to opening up all these roads, so again, I offer it. It's, I know there's other factors to look at, but it's part of our good neighbor policy, and it can be part of the process and the healing. So, not this week,
Wonderful, and thank you.
Thank you for that offer.
Is there anything else, anyone else who would like to make any comment?
Yes, who can accept that offer?
You can't get a new driveway, I'm sorry.
No, whoa. Not here.
In all honesty, we would probably have to take it at some point to town
Town
meeting.
meeting, selectmen.
For the value.
I'm not, it has to move through the selectmen's line, but we appreciate
In
you.
years past, it wasn't as strict. We used to maintain it on a yearly basis, but that was off of our plate, so
Has it already been brought to the selectmen?
it has not. But again, hearing
Where we are. it was-
hearing the workload that the town is under, a little bit we try to.
That's great, that's really stepping forward.
Beautiful, thank you.
So I guess what we would like to do on our board is just make the selectmen aware of that, as you are, and perhaps bring that up as part of your agenda in the next meeting.
Right.
Can we,
Lawyer needs to be involved.
right, and just to have a discussion point at your next meeting, it's gonna have to
Perhaps
figure out where
in
it is.
Speaking with Eric and the attorney, maybe make it a little more blanketed versus.
Again, as soon as you get a lawyer involved, then maybe it's not fiscally pertinent.
We have a good town attorney who doesn't, he's not like other, I'll leave it at that, he's very frugal.
And that's a considerable savings, right now they need anything they can, so if we can do that, we would love that.
Mired in the market.
Thank you again. Anything else that I overlooked? You're on the other section of our agenda? I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Would you please